This is Ian Stephen, who I knew at Aberdeen University in the creative writing group, and he was just remembering that we'd performed at Newton D, the Rudolf Steiner community.
An amazing night, that.
Amazing. I can remember, I'm ashamed to say, just two of your lines, but I've remembered them for 30 years, and one of them was about your brother having his hands in his head, and the other is about Alpha Atlantical Oceans. They're resonant phrases that have stuck in my head. But I can remember my own sonnet that I proclaimed from the top of a ladder as well. It was just a sonnet I'd written to some girl who I never dared to speak to, actually. But, and then we got these wedding, the marriage declarations from somebody, the inmates, I think you'd call them.
I got a job out of it.
Did you? You worked there?
I went there and kind of paid volunteer, got my keep and my pocket money working there for a summer, which was great.
You lived there through all summer? That must have been amazing. Yeah, it was a very atmospheric place with, the designs of the buildings had to fit with the ethics and principles of Steiner and all the rest of it. Yeah.
There we are, not yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, a long time ago. And you were a very remarkable figure in Aberdeen because you would walk around. Well, I remember you just having an otherness about you. You seemed to, you came from somewhere else, but you looked different from all the other students, and you sort of had a satchel. I seem to remember a satchel.
My brother did leather work then, so he kitted me out with a very traditional Highland thing. Kitted the brother out with the satchel when he went to uni.
I see. And you lived under a sort of, it looked like a big rowing boat or something, but it was just the eaves of under the roof of the...
Oh yeah,
a lodging house.
A real proper garret, a proper student's
That's
garret.
right, it was a great garret.
Yeah, it's quite a posh garret. It was an Osborne place.
Right.
I lived in Stonehaven for a year, but the last year I moved into the city. And, you got a good memory.
Well, and you graduated 1980. I actually went away and came back, so I graduated 84, a bit later. And by that time, the creative writing group had people like Ali Smith in it.
Yeah, well, I've met Ali Smith since.
Right.
And I hadn't realised, I like her writing a lot.
Yeah.
And I hadn't realised that she knew of my work. But apparently, well, what she said was, it kind of showed folk that you could go on and just be a writer after uni. You didn't have to go into teaching. Right. Because for me it was a bit of a dilemma, because I graduated with an English teaching qualification because I did a B.Ed course. But by that time I'd started to publish poetry and short stories here and there. Yeah. And everyone I spoke to who was a teacher said the same thing. They said, don't do your probationary year because you'll end up with mortgage, probably kids and commitments and everything. And you'll always be meaning to write the book like I was meaning to. So if you've got anything to say, just do it. Right. So I just came back to Lewis. I stayed with my old man who was the most easygoing guy you could meet. And basically helped him a bit. And I worked as an auxiliary Coast Guard, basically as a volunteer. Right. Coast Guard service.
Until 95.
To give me a contact with the outside world. And just made books, books of poems, short stories. I worked with a guy I met at the local rugby team. I used to play rugby, and he was a photographer with the local paper. Yeah. But excellent eye, and we admired each other's poems and photos. Decided to make a book, and that was published. A wonderful publisher called Dangaroo Press, right, based in Denmark, but run by an Australian. And Anna Rutherford specialised in post-colonial literature, so it's a really interesting list. Some people there are now very, very eminent writers. And but it was an eclectic, interesting list with South African, Indian, New Zealand, Caribbean writers, and I think a Hebridean was fitted quite well.
So it's part of the post-colonial scenario.
Absolutely.
Is there some independence movement for the Outer Hebrides?
Sure. No. But no, it was a very interesting. Basically, there was a sense of a culture of its own, and I felt very at home in that list. Yeah. And the biggest mistake I ever made in publishing was a later book of poems, which was with my own photographs, because I'd started to get interested in making my own photographs after working with Sam. I used to kind of be the apprentice, pressing a bulb at the right time for Sam. But Sam went on to become a filmmaker. But I made exhibitions and put poems and photographs together. And Dangaroo Press were desperate to publish it, but the Scottish Arts Council changed the policy, and if the publisher didn't have an office in Scotland, they weren't eligible. And in retrospect, I could have done a co-publication with a Scottish publisher and everything. But meanwhile, I had another offer locally, and the book never really got properly. It was very nice to produce, but it never really got properly distributed.
Right.
And then I made a book. I made a later collection of poems with Polygon.
Yes.
Who I had a long association with, because I used to publish in the Edinburgh Review when I was at uni.
Right.
Started to publish there and appeared regularly in the Edinburgh Review, which was linked to Polygon then.
Yes, Polygon is the Edinburgh University publisher.
Well, it was then. It's now privately owned, but it was then.
Yeah.
And that was again a really interesting list, because I met people like Robert Allen Jameson from Shetland, who I'd followed his work. We'd both independently followed each other's work, Shetland and Lewis writers, but we met at this astonishing joint launch of Polygon Poetry List, which was one incarnation of the Richard DeMarco Gallery.
Oh yes.
In it was when it was in Blackfriars in Edinburgh.
Right.
It was a real cracking classic bohemian poetry night. That's also when I met Murdo MacDonald, now Professor of Scottish Art History at Dundee University.
Right.
And he was then also at Edinburgh, University Press Edinburgh. And Alec Finlay, Ian Hamilton Finlay's son.
I know, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Writer and artist.
Yeah. And
publisher. But at that time, I would say predominantly a publisher. And Egg became my main publisher for many years. So I made various small editions with Egg.
Oh.
And
are you in that Road North project he made?
Yeah, I made a little link.
Right,
it was very nice to make a connection again, because I hadn't worked with Egg for years, and that was a fine connection to make.
And he was mapping Japan to Scotland, which is something I've done.
Yeah.
Though I haven't read Basho, actually, I have to say, but yes. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, that's a connection again, but so that's how that worked out.
Son of a king of Norway, Break, freckled or speckled, but a handsome man, and a good man on a boat, skipper, not just because he was the king's son. He had a voice people could be quite happy to hear. It'd make them feel happy aboard, and they'd be worried about nothing, because nothing would get him too excited. He'd be calm, any situation, and they navigated as far as Islay and Jura, where the tides are ferocious.
For some reason I thought you were a lighthouse keeper, not a coastguard. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was the image on the front of that first book was a lighthouse.
It was, that's right, you're absolutely right. But that often happened, because I think it's the kind of romanticism of a lighthouse keeper poet, and that would keep happening, and I'd have to say to people, well, do you know, the fact of the matter is I'm a coastguard officer, and latterly I was a watch manager, so basically I ran a watch in a very high-tech operations room, never went out in the cold and wet.
Okay.
Never, I did look through a very high-class binoculars and a stand now and again, but mostly it was as a coordinator of international search and rescue. That was my job.
Yeah, it's a beautiful image of the poet sitting by the bulb, on the lighthouse and being a beacon in a metaphorical way. But and so it's important to you to be rooted here and working here, and or is it?
Probably. I'm a bit ambivalent about it. In some ways,
you feel a bit trapped sometimes here, or
not really.
Cabin fever?
No, not really, because I'm very privileged, and I get asked to do tell stories, take workshops, do poetry readings, take part in various combined arts projects. I work across pretty well all the arts now. Right. So I do a lot of travelling, and I meet great folk and go to festivals, and it's not a bad lifestyle. But I do like the home base, and I'm pretty active as as a sailor, as a volunteer with community boats in Lewis, traditional Lewis boats. My own boat, I've got a 33-foot yacht, which is pretty much part of my own working practice, navigating the settings of stories so that you've experienced the geography when you tell them, writing about, you know, the act of sailing in different ways, making different art projects connected with navigation.
Do you do as much sailing in winter as you do in summer? Because
sometimes I do more.
Right.
Because often in the summer I'm involved in travelling, festivals, projects.
Yeah.
Winter tends to be more writing, and often I have more time for sailing. We get a high incidence of gales, not quite as bad as Orkney, because I've lived aboard my boat in Orkney in winter, and bloody hell.
So when you go to Wales next week, for instance, do you take the yacht, or
no,
you wouldn't?
I wouldn't mind doing that sometime. But you need a time scale to do that.
Yeah.
And you know, if I've learned anything about navigating in small boats, it's the key factor is time.
Right.
Also, you saw that again and again as a Coast Guard. People are under time pressure. That's when mistakes happen.
Right.
For instance, I've got these great friends who've been planning a trip to the Faroes for years. Well, for a couple of years. Meticulously planned this time with a good weather window when statistically you've got the best weather. And we've had the wind in the northeast, which most people would say is an unusual wind here. Right. Southwesterly prevailing wind, we used to say. And they've had the wind in the northeast it's been there for months.
From Siberia or something.
Feels like it.
Right.
So they've gone to Ireland.
Okay.
And that's really it. But so for me, the use of a boat in a project, I always say to people, you know, you have to get it in your head that it's not like going on a train.
Right.
You have to set aside time for it, and there's always a maybe. And that has to be part of the project.
Right.
But often I've been lucky enough to be able to sail to projects. Like I had a storyteller in residence post in Orkney, and I was able to sail up to Orkney and live aboard the boat for a winter when I was there.
Oh.
And that's great when it happens.
Wow. Amazing. Yes, it's sort of like stepping stones, you know, the Faroes. And have you been to Iceland?
I have, but I haven't sailed there under my own steam. My sister lives in Iceland, has done for years.
Oh, wow.
And I'd love to sail to Iceland, but I haven't done that yet.
Right.
But I have been to Iceland, and when Jane lived in Akureyri, there was a little supply boat went to Grimsey Island, which is above the Arctic Circle.
Right.
And there was a blue enamel coffee pot on the go all the time.
Oh. And
you got your meals, very simple, and you stayed overnight on the boat when it was alongside at Grimsey. It had enough time to walk around. It was July, but even then there was hardly any darkness.
Right.
So it was a wonderful experience. And the project I want to move on to, and in fact, it's already sketched out. So I should say the project I want to complete when I finally put the novel in the post, any week now, is a retelling of traditional stories on a sea route from Brittany to Iceland.
Wow.
But the idea is it'll be interspersed with non-fiction writing about the act of navigating these routes.
Are you a fan of Auden and McNeece's book about Iceland?
It's quirky, and it's a long time since I've read it. But I remember
it's all about
Lord
Byron. They're just chatting about Lord Byron as they go to Iceland. But it's very resonant, or I don't know, evocative. All those things. It's worth it, but it might influence what you write. Well, but it's not really. It's not.
I'll go back to it. I'll definitely go back to it. But I've been doing more reading in the last 6 months than I've done for years, because I had a post as reader in residence with the local library service.
Right.
It was 5 residencies throughout Scotland. I was lucky enough to have one of them.
Right.
And it did give me a chance to do some reading that I've been meaning to do for a while. And a theme kind of seemed to develop in the residency, really going from fiction to non-fiction. And really, I came to the conclusion in the end that I'd be very hard-pressed to define any difference between fiction and non-fiction writing.
Right. It's really just a legal status to avoid being offensive to people. But what's your novel about? Can you talk about the story of the novel?
Absolutely. The title is A Merry Book of Death and Fish.
Right.
And it's about death and fish.
Right.
But
in a merry way.
Well, I hope it's quite jocular tone.
And is it a poet's novel in the sense that it's sparely and carefully written and quite short?
I think it's a poet's novel in that it's carefully written. But
it's not short.
180,000 bloody words.
Wow.
Which I don't quite know how that's happened. I hadn't realised it was such a long book.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine is a colleague, friend I work with who that's another story, he's an improvisational pianist, but he has another hat, which is Writing Development Officer for the Highlands. Okay. And he's asked me about the novel a few times, and then he said, look, we can pay to have it read by a very experienced writer who knows the current publishing scene really well. And would you like to do that? I'd be daft if I didn't. And it was really worth doing. I got a great reader's report, which was very encouraging. After 3 nice pages, I'm waiting for the butt. And the butt was basically, well, there's a few longer novels. Lord of the Rings is longer, and Vikram Seth's A Suitable Boy is quite a bit longer.
Right.
Hi, how's it going? How you doing? I'm Sean.
I'm fine. I'm Nick.
Nick, nice to meet you. Not bad. It's not bad.